had posted the same image on my Insta, though it was edited in Photoshop on desktop. Gonna try to get the same result on mobile today. I'm gonna try my sky replacement technique here. First, turning this image to black and white and choosing the blue color, which gives a good contrast between the foreground and the background. Now using curves, I'm gonna try making the foreground completely black and the sky white. As you can see, the dark clouds could make it a bit difficult here. So I'm gonna go back to the original state of the image, and in the white balance menu, we'll reduce the temperature to the max to get as much as blue as possible. Now going to the masking screen, tapping on the stacks icon, view edits, white balance stack and the brush icon. Here with the brush value set at 100, just need to brush on the dark clouds to make them blue. No need to get precise here, roughly brushing on the darker parts of the sky. Now coming back to the black and white effect, you can see those brushed parts have turned completely white, as we had chosen the blue color option initially, which makes them the brightest here. Now using curves, I'm gonna apply a hard high contrast to turn the image literally to black and white. To turn the white spots in the foreground to black, turning the whole image to black by dragging the top right point to the bottom. Now in the masking screen, brushing on those white spots to turn them black. Just need to be a little more precise around these edges. As you can notice, certain black spots like these poles in the upper part are a bit distracting here. So now turning the image to white using curves by dragging the lower left corner point to the top. With masking, zooming as much as possible and brushing on those to turn them to white. Now we have turned the part of the sky completely white. Now with double exposure, I'm gonna add the original image and choose the mode add, which inserts the image only on the black parts, leaving the sky part completely white. Before adding the sky image, I'm gonna get some details back in the darker areas of the foreground by increasing the shadows in Tune Image. Next, I'm gonna add this image using double exposure with the mode darken selected. Just moving it a little to a desired position. As you can see, the dark parts of that image has overlapped on the foreground here. So going to masking screen and brushing out those overlapped parts of the image in the foreground. Now I'm gonna add couple of selective filters. First one on the greens. Adding some contrast. Also on the train engine. Adding contrast, also add some saturation which makes it pop. Now we'll add some selective vignette by applying vintage filter with the preset 12. Adding a bit more of the style strength. Then with masking, removing the effect on and around the train, which gives more limelight to the train. Next, to get the fog on the sides of the tracks, using curves I'm gonna lift the blacks to make the whole image brighter. Also adding greens and the reds to get that orangish tone. In the masking screen, first I'm gonna brush roughly on the right part of the track with 100% opacity. Then decreasing the opacity to 0, brushing out at the bottom to give that soft fog effect. Removing the effect on the train. Also adding the fog effect on the other side of the tracks. Now to add a bright sun on the brighter part of the sky, again using curves to slightly brighten the overall image. With masking, just tapping on the left edge of the sky to make the image more interesting. Now applying some soft contrast selectively on the foreground other than the sky. Next was some dodging on the train engine with the brush tool. Brushing on this big yellow stripe to get it more bright. Also a bit around here. Subtle effect which gives the image more pop. Couple more selective filters to tone down the blues in the sky. also more saturation on the left part of the sky. The final look here. This is a beautiful setting to make the image look more stunning. I'm gonna start with selective filters mainly to brighten the sky. This is required for a smooth replacement of the sky. Placing one filter here and brightening it to the maximum. Also reducing the saturation completely. Gonna copy the same and paste couple more in the sky to try to make it completely white. You can still notice some clouds, so we'll copy the same effect and insert it again to make it completely white. These filters have also affected the parts of the foreground including the tree edges. So going to the masking screen and with the brush value at 0, brushing out the effect on these edges to get the details back. Also on the foreground. Same with the earlier filters. Now using curves, I'm going to darken the image and save this as a separate copy which we'll need later. We'll delete this curves effect. Going to double exposure, adding this sky image with evening colors. Changing the mode to darken, which fills the brightest parts of the image, mainly the sky. Placing it at desired position. This has affected the foreground also. So going to masking screen, brushing out the image in the foreground. Also with lesser opacity on the edges of the trees, trying to make it a bit more natural. The edges don't look good. We'll try to fix it later. Again with double exposure, this time adding the earlier saved darkened image and applying the overlay mode which gives this result. Reducing the opacity a bit to get more details on the foreground. Going to masking screen, brushing out this effect in the sky and around the edges. Now to create bright light, using curves, lifting the blacks to make the image white, dragging the top point of the blue curve down to add yellows, but need to bring down the whites a bit to get hint of yellow here. Now to the masking screen. Here with different levels of opacity, we'll apply the effect around the center. First with 25%, zooming out a bit and tapping around here. Then with 50%, zooming in a bit and tapping. Next 75%. Then zooming in more and applying it with 100%, which gives a nice transition of a soft sunlight. Using selective filters, we'll darken these bright spots in the sky. This affects the main source of light. So in the masking screen, brushing out to get the light back on the main source. Next, to give color to the light, using curves, adding yellow to the highlights. Also adding reds to get orangish tones. Next, using double exposure, I'm gonna add the original image and set the opacity at 100. Going to masking screen, first I'm gonna hide the image and with brush value at 100, zooming in and brushing on these to pop those areas. We'll use different levels of opacity and brush on the parts where the sunlight will be hitting. Next, adding some hard contrast with curves. In the masking screen, applying it on the lands in the middle for more pop. Now using curves, I'm going to darken the image, then add some blues by dragging both the red and green curves down. This I will apply on top part of the sky, which gives a nice vignette effect. Also hides the hard edges on the trees. So here are the changes after each effect applied. The final result here. I'm gonna first start with this image from which the sky will be used as the background. Starting by going to lens blur tool and changing to linear option. Turning down the vignette strength and transition and moving it to bottom. Now increasing the blur strength to about 70 and applying it. Now I'm going to darken this with the curves tool. Next, going to double exposure, I'm going to add the main image and increase the opacity to 100 and apply it. Now going to the masking screen. With the image hidden and brush value set at 100, roughly revealing the subject. Now zooming into the maximum and with the brush value set at 0, carefully brushing on the edges to reveal the background sky. After completing the masking work mainly around the top part of the subject, I'm going to zoom out and remove the mask at the bottom for a seamless transition between the foreground and the background. Fine-tuning the masking. Going back and removing the blur at the top of the sky for a more natural depth of field. Now I'm going to add a bright light behind the subject using curves. First, brightening the image overall and adding reds and greens for yellowish tint. Going to masking screen and applying the effect where the subject would be. You can see the effect here. You can notice the white smoke here which is distracting. To remove it, I'm going to use double exposure and add the main image again. And increasing the size so that the parts of the smoke is covered with red soil around. Setting the opacity to 100 and going to masking screen. Just tapping on the smoke to cover it. Adding a selective filter on it to make it look a little more natural. Darkening the overall image again and applying this time at the bottom. With curves, brightening the overall image again with yellowish tint. Applying it again in and around the front of the subject to make it more interesting. A selective filter on the green gear to pop the subject more. Again darkening with curves. This time masking work for a vignette effect by removing the darkness around the middle of the image. Now I'm gonna add this image of fire with sparks to make the image interesting. Let me get back to how I edited this fire image to make it work on the image. Opening this image separately, I first darkened it using curves so that the darker parts are completely black. Adding saturation and warmth and saving it. Adding the same image with double exposure and moving it slightly to the left so that the sparks are around the middle. Then using the perspective tool and scale option and dragging it to the right to get this blurred motion effect. Doing it a couple more times and saving it. Now we have two images of the fire sparks. Now adding the first saved image with double exposure and choosing add mode, which removes all the black areas from the fire image, placing it somewhere on the right. Masking work to get it right. Making sure to remove the sparks on the plant which is in the foreground. Now adding the second image of the sparks. You can try your own way to make it look more interesting. Added the same a couple more times to get it look like this, which is the final result. Hope you found some useful tricks here and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.